Hello, and welcome back. Today I want to talk a bit about the Petraliths in Aion. Most of you know that in the Aion 2 trailer the Petraliths are shown, but did you also know that they have been already teased in the open beta cinematic of Aion around 15 years ago? With Aion 2 arriving in 2025, we should revisit the Petraliths and their involvement in Aion. So, let's start. And the first question that we have to cover is, what even are the Petraliths? Petraliths are these giant golem-like creatures whose bodies are mostly made out of stone. They were considered to be alive, but they lack any consciousness and instead have to follow the will of either their creator or whoever activated them. Due to their immense size and almost impenetrable armor, they are feared by all, Devas, Balaur, and everything in between. But where do these giant petroliths come from? That is a question that is not so easily explained, since there are multiple different types of petroliths. What we do know is that the petroliths are ancient, and in this long time span, a lot of the clues have either vanished or have been distorted. In the game itself, the first time we really learn more about the Petraliths is when we do some work in Theobomos. Theobomos was once a lush and verdant area, but it was burnt to ashes during the Cataclysm. Nowadays, it is a deserted, smoldering wasteland that has become a prime gathering place for bounty hunters, runaway criminals, and also for treasure seekers. Many years ago, before the Cataclysm, a researcher lived there. His name was Theobomos, and he did not trust the Imperial lords. And yes, the land and the researcher are both called Theobomos, so the land was named after him, but we will get to that. Theobomos researched the Calidans, which are a very aggressive boar-type race of sapiens. His interest in the Calidans arose when he first found some Calidan relics that depict a being of godlike power, not Aion, but somehow related to him. The Calidans feared this creature's might and praised them as deities, and their worship seemed to be centered around a specific hill. The researcher Theobomos decided to gather some troops and clear the hill from the Calidans, and then he started to dig. He indeed found a petrolith, but the petrolith was very damaged. It took Theobomos a long time to repair it, to the extent that the petrolith could be activated, but he managed to do it. The first tests already showed Theobomos the huge potential and power the petrolith would have when it was completely repaired. But before Theobomos could finish his work, the Balaur invaded the land Theobomos and destroyed everything in their path. Even though the petrolith wasn't fully repaired, Theobomos had no other choice but to activate it and use it against the Balaur to help his people. The results were astonishing. Still half-broken petrolith ran through the Balaur hordes and killed entire regiments of Balaur in mere seconds. But as the villagers' faces brightened with hope, a giant shadow fell upon them. It was Reian, the mightiest of the Balaur lords. He was able to tear the petrolith to pieces in mere seconds. The still half-broken petrolith had simply no chance against the power of a dragon lord. And that was our first time we heard of the petroliths in the game. Later, when we arrive in Ingizan or Galkmaros, we meet the Reian, an ancient race that lived here long before Vielios and Asmodeans arrived here. The Reian called the petroliths Aion's soldiers or Aion's protectors. They believed that Aion himself created the petroliths, but they seem to be all gone now. But one particular Reian believes that he saw one of Aeon's soldiers in the Uda's temple. He couldn't believe it at first, but he was sure that it was one of Aeon's soldiers. Here it turns out that Aion himself did not create the Petraliths. Aion created the Jotun, or Jotun, I'm gonna say Jotun for now, okay? So Aion created the Jotun, and the Jotun created the Petraliths under Aeon's command. Now, as I said, the Jotun are an ancient race, created by Aion himself. They are incredibly powerful and resilient beings, absolutely devout in their worship of Aion. Well, the Jotun created many different types of constructs, like Na golems, Kal golems, and also the chakras, like what the Silverblade Rotan is. Their main goal was to create Petraliths and to maintain them. The Petraliths were created to use them against the Balaur. But in a ferocious battle, the Jotun were defeated, and soon disappeared from sight. The few Jotun that survived the battle now reside in many different workshops, where they continue to build new constructions and are unshaken in their belief in Aion. One of the Petraliths that fought the Balaur can also be seen petrified in Ingizin. And that is all we know this far from Aion Classic about the Petraliths. But there's a bit more we know from Retail Aion. Now, it was a long time ago, so the details are a bit faded, but I will try to cover it as good as I can. Later on in Retail Aion, we learn about another type of Petralith, the Hyperions. Well, the first Petraliths were very hard to build because it took a lot of time. Due to their great size, the Hyperions were much smaller and therefore easier to make more of them. And even though they were smaller in size, they would match up with the other Petraliths in power. But how is that possible? Well, the answer is the Danoir. And here we go into another huge topic that I will only slightly explain because I shouldn't make this a 2-hour video. So, the Danoir were an ancient race which existed before the Cataclysm. They were a very gifted race, and not only rivaled but actually outdid the Balaur in many ways. The Danoir built majestic temples and also very powerful weapons. The Balaur and the Danoir had many battles over the years, but the Balaur under the lead of Tiamat gained the upper hand in those lengthy battles. The Danoir decided to build a weapon of such immense power that it could end the Balaur's armies, the Hyperions. But the problem was the fast advance of the Balaur meant that the Danoir could not activate the Hyperions fast enough. Aware of their incoming defeat, the now defenseless Danoir wished to prevent the Balaur from getting their claws on the Hyperions. They did not want the Balaur to use the Hyperions and cause more pain on others with them. So they destroyed the Hyperions and met their end as the Balaur broke through their final defenses. But this was not the end. Tiamat found the last not destroyed Hyperion and tried to activate it, which luckily for the Devas did not work. Because just as the Dragonbound in Ingizin and Galkaros did not know what power source the Petraliths were using, Tiamat also did not know how to make the Hyperion work. Another Dragon Lord, Beritra, learned of Tiamat's secret weapon and took it for himself. Under a disguise, he deceived and used us Devas to activate the Hyperion and commanded it against us. We managed to defeat the Hyperion, but Beritra escaped. And not only did he escape, he used the knowledge he gained of the Hyperion to make his own invasion war machines even more powerful. And that is when the entire Retail Aion game became much more futuristic, with the Devas also using more advanced technologies, like the Ethertech and the Gunner classes. And I think that's all there is to it. Now, what do you think? Will the Petraliths play a very big role in Aion 2? In the Aion Vision trailer many years ago, they were even teased as like big siege weapons, destroying buildings and everything else in their path. The thought of it was always very cool, but this would be a humongous task to make it work well. Anyway, I thank you all for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe do me a favor and leave a like. If you have any questions or suggestions for new videos, leave them either here in the comments or in our Discord server. Have a wonderful week and see you next time. Bye!